you were ultimately charged with killing or shooting of 2 police officers, which got you the 25 to life verdict, which ultimately got reversed. So bring us through this whole situation of what exactly you were charged for and convicted of.
Well, I was charged with the assault in the first degree of two police officers, Curry and Benetti, who were assigned to the district attorney Frank Hogan's home as guards, you know, they sat out in front of his house as security, and it was on May 19th, 1971, that these 2 guards were lured away from their post, and they were and their patrol car was riddled with bullets, and they were grievously wounded. And the next day, two patrolmen, a black one and a white one, were patrolling in New York, up in Harlem, up in Washington Heights, and they were ambushed and killed. And in New York, at that particular time, I don't know if you read the newspapers. If you go back through the newspapers from 1969, 70, 71, you see there were a number of police shootings of young black boys, just like you have now. You know, inexplicable shootings. You know, one boy, you know, he had a BB gun, and another one, the policeman said he caught an epileptic fit and couldn't take his finger off the trigger. All kinds of ridiculous stuff. But, you know, and the PBA would, of course, back these individuals, and nothing would ever happen to them. And the PBA, the Policemen Benevolent Association, felt that, you know, that the Panther Party were trying to disempower the police and all of this stuff. So they stepped up their harassment, and they stepped up their brutal activities in the black community, especially when we were putting forward this. And in retrospect, members of the Black Underground, members of the Black Panther Party who were underground, you know, who weren't under the discipline of the Central Committee, who weren't under the political leadership of the mass movement, they would react to these types of activities.
So you're being, at that time, you were being charged with like I guess a drive-by shooting of officers Curry and Minetti.
Yes, yes, sir.
They ended up getting shot, but they both survived. How exactly was your name implicated in the shooting?
Well, when I was arrested and captured at this after hours club in the South Bronx, one of the weapons that were taken when we were captured was a .45 caliber submachine gun, a .45 caliber M1 A1 submachine gun. Now, they said the police said they ran the ballistics of this .45 caliber weapon, and it was compatible with, it was consistent with the bullets that these officers suffered. You got to remember, they didn't get any metal casings, they didn't get any shell casings. All they had was the ballistics, the actual bullets that penetrated the car and penetrated the thing. Of course, you know, I had to do a crash course in weaponry and ballistics to ascertain that particular weapon, the M1A1, had a changeable barrel. And not only did it have a changeable barrel, the reason why it had a changeable barrel, because if it got so hot when you fired it that the barrel had to be changed. It lost its rifling. The twists and turns in the barrel that give the bullet its rifling. And one of the things that does is it changed the markings on all of the bullets. So the bullets that you first fire out the gun are not the same, will not look like the same bullets that come out the gun after 2 or 3 clips. There'll be a whole different set of markings on them. So the ballistics, which we realized early on, the ballistics was bogus. It was the FBI concealed evidence, but we couldn't prove it when I went to trial. But I had said to my attorney that when I had gotten arrested, a few weeks after I was arrested, some comrades of ours in the BLA were arrested in California. And when they were arrested, the exact same gun was seized from them, a .45 caliber A1 submachine gun. And they ran a ballistics test on it. But they concealed the information from that ballistics test from my case when they separated the cases. When I was first busted, when I was first arrested, if you recall, I told you that on the 19th of May, Curry and Bonetti were shot, and the next day, 2 other policemen, Piagentini and Jones, were killed. So initially, both of these cases were the same case as far as the NYPD was concerned. They were one investigation. They believed that it was a connection from the very beginning. Of course, the FBI assumed there was a very connection, and they already had issued an all-points bulletin for our arrest, even though they had no evidence that we were involved. The documents proved this. But what the FBI did was supply the NYPD with their information from their black nationalist files so that they could know who they were going after, why they were going after them. And the 21, of course, became the primary suspects automatically. So when I was arrested, this weapon was seized. They ran ballistics, and they said this ballistics were consistent with Curry and Bonetti, and that it was my weapon, that I'm the one that had it, that it belonged to me. And I came into the club with it, and so therefore it was mine. And so therefore I was the one that used it on May 19th to shoot these cops. This was their case, basically. And so they went with that. And of course, it wasn't true because I was never there on May 19th. I didn't own the weapon. The weapon was part of a cache of weapons in a safe house that I was at.
Before you were actually, sentenced to 25 to life, that was actually the third trial.
Yeah, that was the third trial
that you went through. The first trial you went through was a mistrial.
And the second one was a hung jury.
The second one, no, I'm sorry, no, wait. The first
one
trial
was a hung jury. The second one was a mistrial.
Okay, yeah. The first trial was a hung jury, meaning that the jurors could not all agree on the sentencing. Certain jurors said not guilty, other jurors said guilty. Ultimately,
yeah, but when we polled the jury, the majority of the jurors were for not guilty.
Okay.
Exactly.
So
that's why they changed their script in the third trial.
Yep. So the second trial was a mistrial. Why was it a mistrial?
Well, the second trial was a mistrial because of the jury selection. I think the juries, a few of the jurors had came out and said that they had read Target Blue or they had read something like that, and they wanted to get rid of that jury pool. And because the first trial, I think it was, I had two more jurors. I think out of the 12, I had 8 that wanted acquittal, that didn't believe they had enough evidence. So they needed to regroup. And in the third trial, they went whole hog with the gun and all of this stuff. But by the third trial, Target Blue, the magazine article had already came out, written by Daly. And in the article, he talked about my case. And he talked about how the major witness in my case, said that she didn't know anything when they first picked her up. And she gave a statement, and the statement was written down in this article. So when we went to the judge with the statement, to say, look, there was evidence that they have that they're withholding of the key witness. The key witness is lying. That she said that Mr. Bin Wahad didn't know anything. Wasn't involved. And now she's saying she never said that. So we like to get this police chief or this person in here on trial to see where he got this information from. The judge refused. The judge refused to do it, said it was a newspaper article, it was speculation. We said, but this guy's a deputy police chief. He said, yeah, but he was just hired to write as a hack. He didn't really know nothing. And so he dismissed it, and he wouldn't let it go. And so they were able to use her testimony, the weapon, and all of this stuff. So once I got convicted and I got sentenced, several months later, of course, we know what the history is. Some radicals broke into the Pennsylvania office of the FBI. They found documents that said COINTELPRO. They released it to the newspaper. And it was while I was sitting in the hole in Comstock that I got a hold of a newspaper that talked about the COINTELPRO operations against the Panthers and against radicals and the peace movement. And I told my lawyer then, Robert Bloom, that that I wanted to file a suit to get all the documents that I could from this COINTELPRO, because I know I didn't do what they accused me of doing and they convicted me of doing, and I'm quite sure they got that recorded somewhere.
Okay, so you ended up getting convicted 25 to life. And then you started finding evidence that would actually help to reverse your case. But you ultimately ended up serving 19 years in prison. So why did it take so long for them to actually reverse the verdict?
Well, you know, first of all, they didn't want to admit to anything. You know, and I lost my appeal. And I exhausted my appeal. And then when I filed a civil suit, they tried to get the civil suit dismissed. You know, saying that, you know, only information that they had on me was my criminal record. And then they produced all of the files in my criminal record that basically said I was guilty of the crime. You know, I was built, and there was nothing else. And it was by the grace of Allah that my case landed in the lap of Mary Johnson Lowe. I mean, Mary Johnson Lowe was the first black woman appointed to the federal bench. I think she was appointed by LBJ. And Mary Johnson Lowe, she worked on Brown versus the Board of Education with Thurgood Marshall. She came from the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. And when it landed in her lap, of course, the government said that, you know, I was just a criminal. There was no records on me. The Panthers were just a criminal organization. They didn't do any surveillance. They didn't have any information, right? And then Fred Hampton's case. Fred Hampton's case was matriculating at the same time. The case by Fred Hampton's estate over his assassination. And the lawyers in the Fred Hampton case were very close to the lawyers in my case. Elizabeth Fink and Robert Bloom and Robert Boyle, who took my case. They were very close with Elizabeth Fink because they all worked on the, had worked earlier on the Attica case. And so when the lawyers got discovery in Fred Hampton's case from the government, you know, they got these counterintelligence documents that indicated that there was a federal agent that supplied the floor plan to the Chicago Police Department that they used on the night they went and raided the Panther house and killed Fred Hampton. So it was a federal conspiracy. But in that documents too was a counterintelligence document that said racial matters, counterintelligence program, subject Dhoruba Bin Wahad or Dhoruba Moore. Now, you got to remember that all this time that this case was in front of Mary Johnson Lowe, the federal government was saying they didn't have any counterintelligence files, no FBI files, other than the ones they just gave her, which was related to my present conviction. That that I wasn't under surveillance, they didn't have no paperwork on anything, and they gave the judge everything. So when the lawyers in Chicago sent these files down to my lawyers with my name on them that said FBI counterintelligence program, and I had a number and everything, our attorneys brought this to the attention of Mary Johnson Lowe, and she went ballistic. She went ballistic, literally. She said that y'all have lied to me all of this time. The U.S. government has misrepresented itself all the time. You had these documents in your possession all of these times. If you don't have them, you better find them, and you turn over every document that you have on the Black Panther Party, this defendant, and the Black Liberation Army. And so I wound up staying down at the Federal House of Detention for 3 years while they turned over 750,000 pages of FBI files on the Black Panther Party and on my case. And it was out of those files that we found out that at every interview that they had with the key witness in my case, an FBI agent was there at the interview taking his own separate notes and then submitting them to his own agency for a report. So that means they had a report of everything that this woman said to the police when she said it. And what she said in that newspaper article in Target Blue, she actually did say it, and they recorded it verbatim in the feds. And that's how I got the documents. That's how I brought it to the judge. That's how the judge kicked them in the booty and made him turn over everything. That's how I went to another judge, and he overturned the case. And here I sit in front of you telling you the story.
So after 19 years, your case was overturned because the prosecution actually withheld evidence that could have helped you during your trial.
There it is. Well, they knew I didn't do it they knew I wasn't involved anyway, but they weren't concerned with that. They had indicated early on that they wanted to get me, that they wanted to put me away, and that's what they did. I mean, they do that all the time. And we have comrades, I have comrades still in prison right now, you know, who've been in jail since that time.
What do you think about the whole situation?
Man, my point of view, man, I really feel like they tried to paint a bad picture on my brother and tried to make him look like he was a hater. It was some envy, jealousy type shit, you know what I'm saying? And actuality, you know what I'm saying? Bro been having this shit, man. He been in the condo.
I got my hat on and I had my Coke bottles up under my hat. And I'm sitting at the dinner table like an asshole with the hat on, knowing she gonna tell me to take it off. And I'm just sitting there just gulping down, you know, in my zone. She said, take that goddamn hat off at the dinner table. I'm like, come on, Mom. Coke everywhere.